Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
On that note, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. We are starting off Geeky Gentlemen Holiday Month. I'm Sid Pardue, joining me today is...
A geek for fun.
Ho ho ho. So yeah, here we are starting off Holiday Month, and Alfie has picked a movie for us to review. Alfie, what movie would that be?
We are reviewing 2019 animated Netflix first official animated movie produced by Netflix, Klaus.
Really? This is their first? It's not like one of them DreamWorks properties or something?
No, this is Netflix, 100% in-house, obviously with animation studios, but entirely Netflix produced, Netflix first ever animated film just on their own pocket.
I mean, I guess that makes it just instantly more impressive because the little exposure I had to the Netflix original animated series that weren't like partnered with pre-existing properties like they did with DreamWorks, they did that with like Snails and Boss Baby and stuff, was Kong, King of the Apes, and Tarzan something of the Wild, or some Tarzan show. And both of those were absolute shit. Kong, King of the Apes is like infamously bad, not just even on like a story plot wise or anything. It's ugly to look at, because they go for 3D animation, but it's just very poorly shaded, very poorly lit, and really flat, and poor texture work and everything. It's just an awful series. Tarzan series, I got one episode in, it had all the same ugly look to it, no, not even kind of an interesting premise, so I was like, yep, nope, done. So that's it. It's interesting to hear that this is all 100% produced in-house for them, because they certainly cleaned up their act on at least some of that.
Even, again, just to add to like the list of firsts, the director of this, Sergio Pablos, or Sergio, I don't know how to pronounce that, correct me if anyone in the comments knows, this is his directorial debut.
Interesting.
The lot of firsts for this, which, again, is stunning if you just anyone's seen the trailers for this, that looks like it's a produced of, like, industry veterans, and certainly people in the traditional 2D animation studios joined in onto the production team for this. But yeah, that's just mainly one of the reasons why I want to talk about this, because we talk a lot about animation and film and stuff, and if anyone remembers our history discussion, a lot of that was also in just like what are the technological advancements people can make and how we can keep refining things. 2D animation didn't peak, it just kind of got moved aside for the 3D animation because it was, again, people more unfamiliar with the industry might know the reasonings, but it was mostly it's easier to model something and then get it to act than it is to draw frame by frame. This, however, was kind of pitched as, okay, what if Disney never swapped to 3D animation and just kept improving traditional animation? What would that look like in 2019? And that's this.
Are you telling me this is all 2D animated? Because I'm going to call you a liar.
It is intentionally pitched that way. I know there's lighting effects and specific new improvements in technology, but everything else, frame by frame, yeah, you can look up the Gengas on like Twitter. Some of the artists have been posting them.
I'm really surprised by that, because then they intentionally made things look like 3D animation, or at least 3D environments and stuff. What I thought I was watching, and I say this as someone with at least some experience in 3D animation and 3D modeling, what I thought I was watching was 2D animated characters on occasion, or 2D animated textures on 3D modeled characters in 3D environments. I thought I was watching more of a mishmash kind of thing, because even like the snow is like very blocky at times. There's just a lot of like this looks very 3D to me, and I guess I'm very surprised to find out that that it's all 2D. I would have sworn up and down that this is a mashup of 2D and 3D.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are certainly 3D elements in this. If there aren't, then I'm even more amazed. But a lot of that has to do with how they kind of wanted to approach. I got a quote right up here. It says they wanted to avoid the previous animations of characters looking like stickers on painted backgrounds. They wanted everything to look kind of familiar. So a lot of the lighting and shading effects used on the backgrounds will be applied to the characters as well, even if they are drawn, giving them almost a three-dimensional kind of weight to it. So that's, again, extremely... I think maybe just the core of the point is this is a very unique looking film, regardless of how it comes together. Again, more industry people, I'm sure there are videos actually dissecting this, but just from how it's pitched and how it's marketed, this, and especially the buzz this got coming to release, people were calling this the return of 2D animation with like a big oomph.
I mean, that's really fascinating. It makes me wish I actually did research for episodes of Geeky Gentleman, because just damn, you're kind of blowing me out of the water with it. It's really, really cool. That is really, really cool on an animation front. To kind of get into the story a little bit, you know, I tend to be a bit of a downer when it comes to holiday month stuff. I really don't like a lot of Christmas movies all that much. Not just because they're sappy or whatever, but like, you get told that's the true meaning of Christmas enough times, you get kind of over it. I get that. I don't think I ever matured out of that teenager phase of rolling my eyes at being told the meaning of Christmas. Because I don't know, sometimes it just irks me. I just get tired of it, and it starts to feel very disingenuous. So watching this, I was kind of like, okay, and so he's a jerk at home, and then he's getting sent out, and then he's gonna learn the meaning of Christmas and learn to treat people better, and then there's gonna be a thing, and this is gonna happen, and yeah, I mean, I was pretty much right from the get-go. I kind of saw where this movie was going within the first 10 to 15 minutes, but I don't care. It was still really well done. It told that story in a really good way, very effectively, I guess I'd call it. And so even though I saw every beat, and most of the time those beats kind of annoy me, or just don't work for me, here they did. I was actually really happy with how this all came together. And yeah, it is kind of sappy and kind of cheesy, but I did end up really enjoying it. I actually did write down a note, which is very rare for me to do with episodes of Geeky Gentleman. I mainly just riff. So the note I wrote down is Klaus equals Chris Farley and David Spade. You ever watch those old Chris Farley and David Spade movies like Black Sheep?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like a Chris Farley and David Spade Christmas movie?
It's just we're just completely pulled from a different era now. We're just like, oh well, looks like we're gonna just remake that. Yeah, no, you're right. That's totally the vibe this gives off, and it's definitely a vibe I very much appreciate, because this I mainly mention because offhandedly, it was the thing that stuck out in my mind. I was like, oh, 2D animation. It's got something that I can talk about that. So I had the prologue of this episode already in my head, folks. So that's the main reason I pitched this. But as I was watching this, similar to you, I guess with a bit more of a happy temperament, I really got into this. I really got into all the characters. I got into Klaus, Jesper. Everyone kind of came alive because not only is this a gorgeous film to look at, it's a gorgeous film to listen to. The writing here is really sharp, and for a lot of Christmas movies, what does normally put me off sometimes is I do think sometimes it feels like, all right, someone's brought on to do a Christmas movie, so then they've got something under their belt, so then they can actually do the thing they want to write. This felt like everyone on board really wanted to do this to the best of their ability, and it came together. Again, that's the true meaning of Christmas.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought I do like Santa origin stuff, I find, for some reason, that really kind of does it for me. I kind of talked about this on Twitter a little bit, but when I heard the name Klaus, and it's like Netflix original movie Klaus, I was like, wait, like Grant Morrison Klaus? And the answer is no. I did get really disappointed, but Klaus is another Christmas thing that I like, and it's also Santa origin. And the one Rankin and Bass special I actually like is the one where they do Santa's origin. I guess I just have a thing for Santa Claus origin pieces. And so this is doing a lot of things that I think are pretty cool. And one of those things is they're putting so much of the legend off of Santa, which is kind of neat. I really like that. I like how much of it's this mailman scheme, and that's what kind of builds the legend of Santa, even down to the coal and the stockings and the writing letters to Santa Claus and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a smart move on their part, because I'm with you. I feel like maybe why that is such a unique or appealing take to go into the origins of Santa Claus is it's where it feels the most like mythology, rather than the guy you see on the Coca-Cola bottle or something like that. I feel like this is where, by going back to the roots and telling that story, it gives everything that would otherwise be seen as just as commercial, it's like a Mickey Mouse kind of thing. It gives it that weight. It gives it back to that. Oh, this can be a figure like that. And my specific thing is, let's make this permanent that Santa Claus is a fucking badass. Klaus, and now this. Let's just keep this momentum going and let's just keep him axe wielding badass the whole way through. that is even this version. How we end this, I'm just headcanning. Grant Morrison's thing is like, oh yeah, Christmas is when he comes out and delivers all the presents, but the other days of the year he's fighting demons. He's doing other shit. It's just, Christmas is just this one day in his time. So I'm that fandom, but this making Santa Claus almost a happy accident that comes across from a lot of selfish intentions is a really unique spin on it, and it feels very real. It feels like if there was gonna be, no matter how many people's motives going into something, the message at the end and the idea is that you can still learn from that to become a better person, even if you went in with kind of skeevy ideas or stuff like that. I don't know, I feel that's a unique take for a family all takes Christmas movie. You could see a lot of this going around. The thing is, Jesper goes to this town and then he's immediately okay, I'm gonna fix it for the better. But he's not. He's I'm gonna fix it for the better so I can get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
For a good majority of the film, even when things are going well. And I think that was a very unique take. You could argue maybe, if you wanted to get into maybe some negatives, how well does that resolve? Maybe this could have been a little bit longer to maybe sit with that a little bit more, the consequences of when that gets out, or the other side plots in this maybe aren't as strong as the main core, but I'd almost argue when you get to that line of level, you're kind of missing the main feeling of this film. Is it's meant to give you that feeling most of all.
I'd agree with that. I don't know if I'd say it's wholly unique, because I just think a lot of Christmas movies do this, where like you start off with the jerk and their jerkish actions are kind of, you know, put on display and are really annoying throughout the, you know, first act of the film, and then they've got a scheme or something, and then they kind of like learn the meaning of Christmas because they get too close to the scheme throughout it, and then by the time it's all revealed, they've learned their lesson and actually become a good person. I think that's just a lot of movies. That's like a lot of rom-coms and stuff have that exact premise too. Hashtag Christmas movies are all rom-coms. But like, I think that's Jasper's story here, and he is truly the main character, is far from unique, but I think it's kind of to that testament of something doesn't have to be unique to be done well. You know, I think that's an important thing for people to realize, is something can be executed really well and still be just complete regurgitation. It can be just completely derivative and still be executed really well. Sometimes better than the stuff the stuff that's inspired it, you know? So I think that's what we have a case of here, is like Jasper's story, his whole character arc, all that stuff. I feel like I've seen it a million times. You know, if I take a minute and pull up Christmas movies on my phone, I can go, yep, this one, this one, this one. It's pretty standard, but I think it's just a well done case of it.
Fair enough. I think maybe to your point of the execution, that is a really good, I guess, summation of why I think this does work for me so well. Is everything about this screams polish and passion and all of that, but again, you're telling something that is specifically with an icon as big as Santa Claus, who the reach and just general fame you can't even really put into words, right? We talk about a lot of like big characters like Batman and Superman, but even they kind of pale in comparison to Santa Claus, or Father Christmas for my time. That whole weight and dealing with that character who's been interpreted so many different ways, trying to find a wholly new take, you're right, it might be kind of futile, because unless you grab Morrison and you're just a goddamn genius, like, well, why don't I give him abs? So unless you're that horny bastard, nothing's really gonna invent the wheel. So going back to just the core of it, what makes this idea work, and then how can we build some really funny gags around that? How can we maybe give this a different aesthetic that hasn't had before? And I think that is original. I've never seen Claus in a place like this before. Even Morrison's is the most similar, which again, it's weird that this isn't an adaptation of that, because there are a lot of similarities. But even
no
that
wishing.
But like that location of a rundown village, that he's kind of in the woods, feels very different than how a lot of people, even when like he's just on the North Pole and completely separated from everyone, or he's living in the cities and then he goes to the do you agree with that? Like, I feel like I haven't seen this location used for the origin of Christmas before.
Yeah, I mean, it's got like this really interesting background to it, right? It's not just that he's an old man living in the woods alone, right? It's that he's an old man living in the woods alone on an island where everybody hates each other. You know, like, that's such a weird place to put Santa Claus. Because I mean, it's a good choice too, because it frames it in such a way where it's like, if it can work here, then the shtick can work anywhere. If it can work in the worst place in the world, it can and save people from themselves, then this particular package of Christmas spirit can save anybody in the world from themselves. You know?
Mm-hmm. It's like you don't have to worry about when they say, and then they start to spread across the world. And you're like, well, would it really work here? Because you've seen the worst possible place it could ever do is where it was born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing that I was really impressed by. And again, the thing that I really liked about it is so often you're like, oh, Christmas is all about this, and you know, they very rarely show that. Like, if they do, they tend to show it with like one character experiencing a thing, and it's like, oh, and that's it for everybody. Whereas like most of these movies that revolve around the Scrooge, you know, the person who's bitter about Christmas, or the person who's jaded by the world, they tend to show you like that person's experiences or why that person's jaded in like the first act, but then they make that as if it is the outlier, as if being a person with negative opinions on the world is rare and you shouldn't, and everybody else is fine. I guess I'll go for like the Scrooge example here, right? Like, Scrooge gets showed all these other Christmases and everything, and it's not that no one else has experienced, you know, hardship or anything. It's just that like everyone else's Christmas experience is like pretty freaking great. Even like his employee who he treats like shit, his family's still great. You know?
Mm-hmm. He's the one who needs to learn the lesson the rest of the world already knows.
Yeah, exactly. And so this, I think, is a smart move because it shows that the world needs to learn a lesson. You know? Like, that's the thing that I found really impressive. Is like, no, the world is actually kind of broken and it needs this. And I thought that was a pretty good way of delivering that, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's something where, again, and maybe getting into like the larger cast of characters, I feel that you could make that very... The fact that this has its unique style and it's got that charm and the writing is very fast and punchy with the jokes, it keeps that message from being completely overpressing to the point where you couldn't make this like a family film. Like, if you really went into the implications, like you see like old ladies carrying dead bodies constantly, but you never dwell on the implications of, oh my god, this town is fucked. Like this like clan warfare that's been going on for the dawn of mankind. Like, you never get into that as deeply as you could have, and I think it's to the film's merit because you get to have, okay, this place is broken, while keeping that levity of when it does get fixed, it doesn't feel abrupt for the runtime. It feels very natural, and of course that goes for like, I think my favorite scene in this film is when Klaus sees the child first react to his gift, and he's just kind of mesmerized. And there's no like dialogue or anything. It's just the score as the kid plays with the frog. And I was like getting wowed up. I was like, oh my god, this is great. Because it really does immediately build up, okay, this place is horrible, there's no hope. And you see that and you're like, no, fuck that. I thought that was a really strong bit of execution that, on a character level, really lets you get into the head of why someone would do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. How do you feel about Klaus's like history? The idea that that like he had a wife and they were never able to have kids and stuff.
I thought it was heartbreaking. I don't know. Again, you may be able to tell me more if this has been done elsewhere. Because I've definitely heard of someone passing and then he continues to make the toys, but I've never really, it's never been done in an execution way for me quite as powerfully as this, where it is the passage of time is you see him as a young man start. Like, we never really get to see him as a young man, and like he feels like his life's just passed him by, and he's been in the woods all this time making toys. It gives it that tragic energy while still the moment he laughs for the first time and you hear the J.K. Simmons does his ho 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 and only he can, it really does, it hits you differently. It makes you feel the impact of that iconic laugh in a way you wouldn't normally without. You obviously don't get that context, but it is implied the moment he shows up. So I think that's also to the point of what you were saying earlier, where it's like you can see the beats. I don't think that's gonna, anyone listening to this review, you don't really have to worry about spoilers with a film like this, because it is all, most things are telegraphed pre, obviously, but it doesn't matter. It's all about the emotional response when the reveal pays off. So all that backstory I thought worked really well. My favorite part about it, and like the lore of this, is they're like, okay, this is how the legend was made. Nobody knows how the fuck he actually became this magical entity that can come back. Like, I really like that touch. I'm just like, this is just, no one knows why this happens, but it does.
Yeah, I'd agree. To the point on like the can't have kids thing, I know it's definitely the case. It's like directly stated in Santa Claus the movie. The I believe it's Richard Donner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, because he did Superman and then he was like, well, next I'm gonna do Santa Claus.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that tracks. Yeah, so like in that, it's pretty directly stated that he and his wife can't have kids. I don't know if it's like anywhere else. I can't remember the Rankin Bass one, if they try to go that far with it or what. But like it seems to be a pretty consistent idea, and I think the reason for it is, it's not that we've never done, oh yeah, Santa has kids, because we've got it in like the Santa Claus with the Tim Allen movies. There's a couple other times I think I've seen it around where Santa does have children, but it's something about it feels not wrong, but not quite right to me. Like, in a way that I don't think really, I don't have with other characters. Like, you give Superman and Batman kids, I'm like, oh, fucking finally.
And if you age them up, you will kill them.
Right? Right? Like, it just makes sense for those characters to have kids. Santa Claus, in a way, I think doesn't work. I think they're just immediately become something very powerful to the idea of the character who doesn't or can't have children of his own to being the most kind to children in the world. I think there's something just very powerful in that idea, and so I think this movie does a really good job of capitalizing on that. And like, I really like how it, to get more to the movie itself, I really like how it sells Santa here, where like the first scene with him, he's literally like framed like a horror character, you know? Like he's stalking around, he's got the axe, he's in shadow, he's this big burly figure and everything, and it scares the hell out of Jesper. And it looks like he's perfectly content to just be kind of like this scary old man. And then he sees the child's drawing and just like, okay, this kid needs a toy. Like this kid just looks sad, and I've got all these, and I just want to give it to him. So I'm gonna get this postman who got me the letter in the first place, and we're gonna make this happen. I think that's such an interesting little window into it. It provides such a great motivation for why he would want to just give toys to children all the time, you know?
And it's a gradual process. After the first gift, it isn't like, now I'm inspired, I'm gonna do it to everyone. Like, Jasper still figures, oh, I can use this to get the letters. He comes up with all the ideas, gets all these letters from spreading the legend, and then he's like, okay, now I have to convince him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good, he was just, again, really good line in this film. One truly selfless act will always inspire others. That's like a Superman quote. That fits for this character so well that he's almost forgotten that, and although it has inspired others, Jasper not doing it for selfless reasons, but it still leads to that, like, okay, fine, I'll get rid of all the rest of the toys, and once they're all gone, I'll go back to the woods. Like, everything's got an end point. But it's not until he has to reveal the truth about what happened to his wife, and he's confronted with that, and he has to kind of sit on it for a little bit, that he kind of really commits himself to the mission. And again, you look at like superhero origins, like when it's done really well, it's like very much the it's like Batman Begins, right? Is he's trying different things, but it takes him a while to really get, okay, what's the core of this idea? And when he finds the core of Santa, I think that's a really smart approach. Like, really stretch it out. Like, you don't even see him on the screen as Santa Claus, like, at all. You know, like, you know what I mean, right? With like the hat and the outfit. There's no costume reveal at the end. He's always wearing, like, it's the same colors and the same design, right? But he's always Klaus.
Yeah, I mean, like, the first time you see him in anything even like the typical Santa garb, he's like, I don't know if it really works, it's a lot of red, you know, like, all that's going on, and then they kind of move on from it pretty quickly, but that's his costume for the rest of the movie. So I think you're definitely right. It definitely feels very origin, superhero origin kind of feel to it. And you're right. I do like how things kind of build and it just happens slowly. It's like it's probably my favorite scene in the movie when they jump the sled, you know, like for the first time, and you see the sled flying through the air and with the reindeer. It was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty funny, because just how the hell do you get to that? How the hell do you get to reindeer flying a sleigh around the world? And of course it's like, oh, well, one kid just saw something crazy, and so then it just got attributed to Santa. And it's kind of like one of those ideas with Santa that I tend to like a lot, which is it's the power of belief, it's the power of magic that lets him do what he does. And so when you get to the end, it's like, I don't know, I stopped trying to figure it out years ago. I just know that once a year I get to see my friend. And I really like that explanation. I really like the way that they leave it vague, but the way that it sets it up that there's so much myth built up around Klaus that, like, the world kind of perpetuated him. Because it's not that this most definitely is not a world without magic, you know? Like, there's very clearly, like, spiritual forces at work, and it's kind of personified through Klaus's wife in the snow, right? But it's one where, like, there are no, like, hard magic systems. There's no rule book for it. And so it just leaves it vague enough that's, like, you can get that idea that the legend is what was able to make him continue. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a smart way to put it. Because, like, I guess, given all of that, how did you feel about when we were introducing... Okay, so we've got all the Santa Claus stuff and the mythology. Like, everything's kind of ticked off, even to the fact that he gets helpers to help in his workshop, and it's like it becomes a community thing. How did you feel about the world surrounding that? Like, how did you feel about the town of Smizenberg or something to that effect?
Mm-hmm.
Was there any notable bit characters or from, like, the teacher or Jesper himself that stuck out to you as like, oh, I like that arc?
I quite like the villain of the piece, to be honest. It's hard to do a Christmas movie villain and not have them just be, like, a complete tool. So I like that the villain here, it's certainly not, like, a sympathetic villain or anything like that, but it's just, like, it's just an old lady who wants things to be the way they've always been and, like, can't see the good, is just, like, so consumed by hatred. that she's got like this. No, I don't want things to be better. I want them to continue this way. To the point where like she's doing the very things she's trying to fight against, which I thought that was one of the funnier lines in the piece. So we're declaring a truce so that there won't be peace. Exactly.
that moment was particularly good. I like the history and like the very quick but very effective lore you get of this town and just how impossible a task it seems. Everyone's kind of got a mini display, and I think that does help with the villain being able to be the tradition, the way things are right now. Everyone's accepted it. Even the most hopeful people have been kind of broken down by this. So things aren't like in chaos. This town would have probably been the same like this for eternity, and as shown by the history. So it's not from a place of I want to ruin this. It's just like I'm scared this will, again, giving more credit to what is essentially just meant to be like a cartoon over the top villain, but what's meant to be the status quo and upsetting that is a danger, it's a risk. I think that's a strong take of a person who would oppose the coming of Christmas. Well, not even Christmas, because Christmas exists in this already, which I thought was something it's just a one-handed line, but I don't know, I think that's rare to actually acknowledge, oh, by the way, this is a Jesus holiday. But we're just talking about the guy who kind of latched himself onto that myth just because of it already had some staying power to it. But back to my main point about like the town itself and the villain, one of my favorite bits of just lore building, especially because if anyone's paid attention to my channel, is like for a split second there's like a paying of 4. I'm just like, how deep does this go? Like, I want to like, holy shit. Are they descended from the Asgardians? What is this like? Because how I'm reading this, and I'd be very interested to see if there is something like this. But in Norse mythology, there is an eternal feud between 2 different types of Asgardians called the Vanir and the Aesir, and they're practically identical, except they're at constant war. And I'm like, holy shit, is this that? Is Father Christmas actually Odin in this? Because he's the one who no, he's the one who unites the Aesir and the Vanir, and that's what happens here. So my whole life, I was just like, this is really fucking Norse mythology influence, or just I'm reading way too much into it. But all of that was super interesting to me, and even divorcing itself from my fanboyism over that. The way that this world is kind of very quickly and very effectively, you get the sense of where you are and where everyone stands with each other, and like there's little families who, just from the designs alone, you're like, oh, okay, I get that person's deal, right? I think that's very effective, especially on a character design point. The fact that every single adult in this place, except for Jasper and the teacher, looks like a horrific monstrosity, but every child looks like the cutest bead in the entire world. Such a strong, immediate, like, okay, this is who we're rooting for. Fuck these guys, like mental manipulation almost.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. The idea that like the hate has warped their very bodies. It's very Dark Side-esque, you know.
The first one is totally just gender bent sheaf.
I know, right? And so I thought that was really cool how it all works out, and just what really helps with it is when they start being when the adults start actually treating each other not like shit, they start to not look as creepy and as weird, and they start to look like actual humans again. It's a nice little visual cue to show, hey, this is working. And it was just, I don't know, it was just really impressive. It was, again, I think this could have been a much worse film very easily, because I don't think any one thing about it is great except for its execution. I think that's kind of where I keep coming back to in this film, is like, the plot is good, but it's something you've seen before. It's just a really well executed version of that. The performances aren't, stellar or anything, but they service everything, so it just adds to a very good executed package. Every single little thing about it, if this had been, as you were talking earlier, if this had been like one of those Christmas movies that felt very phoned in, you could have the exact same script and nothing would matter. You wouldn't have the same emotional impact. But because so much stuff is just being done so well, I think you're definitely right. I think that's what kind of makes it work, is everyone's bringing their A game to something that otherwise might have ended up being very mediocre.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, I guess, when you're getting to how this stands up to general Christmas movies or even just animated films specifically built for that medium, you can really tell when you're dealing with, again, be it time constraints or just simple lack of skill, or lack of skills are the wrong term to use, but people who aren't really invested or the material is not working. A lot of the time you can tell, like, again, you mentioned the other Netflix things. I doubt anyone was really bringing their A game for Kong or Tarzan, for those specific projects at least. But for this, when there is a passion behind it, and I think maybe I'm finding more that I would say is maybe great than you are, but even then, your point still stands that all of that is 100% elevated by every other thing around it. Specifically, I really like the cast for this. It's always weird sometimes when I hear film live action actors who I'm used to seeing in animation. I don't know, it's always just everyone's an actor, be it a voice actor or a regular actor, but for some reason whenever I hear like, oh, that's Chris Pratt's voice coming out of cartoon, it feels weird to me. But this, I thought everyone did a really stellar job. J.K. Simmons as Santa being standout. Can we keep this forever, please? That is my definitive Santa voice now. It's just J.J. Jameson found a heart.
Parker, give me pictures of Santa now.
Parker. It's a gift.
I wrapped it myself.
Tell that Spider-Man story. You'll have everyone crying. The day Jonah learned the meaning of Christmas. That's a new title.
Oh my, what have you done? Yeah. I think you're right. I think that it is really well done. Maybe I am just coming off more negative. I'm just like, I guess I'm just struggling to see something here where I really feel like I haven't seen it before, and I guess maybe the 2D animation deserves a lot more praise for that. But really, like, the thing for me is, as I sit here and I try to think, okay, what is it doing really well? It's not something I haven't seen before. It's just doing all those things I've seen before better than most other places I've seen them. And so that's the thing that I'm finding more remarkable about it.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe, I don't know, would you, given how much material there's still, I don't know, left to tell, because this is a very much one and done kind of myth, do you feel like there is more merit to this kind of approach being done to stories we've seen time and time again, rather than always trying to completely reinvent the wheel? I guess the example I'd go to is with a lot of, what's the most telling kind of similar like holiday seasonal thing? Like, I don't know. I don't think there's a definitive, like, say, Jack Frost, for example. Like, everyone's kind of got their own idea of what that looks like or what that would be. Mm-hmm. Or even to, like, the Easter Bunny, or, again, I'm kind of scratching my brain from the top of my head for what could match this, but I think it's very much, Father Christmas is particularly, when it comes to holiday seasonal figures, very agreed upon of what that looks like, what that sounds like. So being able to just tell that story to the best of their ability might be like the it's the way you get to like doing a classic, right? When someone watches the same thing over and over again, and this becomes like a generational film that stands on its own because it's not trying to subvert things to a large extent, at least. Do you feel like there's maybe, or I guess just the best question, do you think there's a merit to just straight takes with strong execution, or would you prefer if this did try to go a little bit more subversive?
I mean, I think there's room for both. I think there's room for like the subversive take Christmas thing. My favorite Christmas movie is still Bad Santa. So, do what you will with that information.
Iron Man 3.
Right, there you go. I think there's room for the subversive, and there's room for like that more traditionalist take, and I think that they can both bring strengths respectively as needed.
Yeah.
What I think one has a stronger risk to it, and that is going more traditional there's more of a chance that you're going to put people off if you go traditional, because I feel that there's such a plethora of it that it's hard to do genuinely well. I think a good example of that is the thing our friend Steve's been tweeting about, Hallmark movies. They're all like this very traditional take on what a Christmas movie is. And a lot of them feel very phoned in, very disingenuous, because the traditionalism can feel to an audience like it's thoughtless. Whereas something that is subversive, like Nightmare Before Christmas, for example, you're going in with much clearer intentions, which proves you're putting more thought into it just from the start. Whether or not it's sitting good will, of course, remain to be seen down the line, because there are, of course, still subversive Christmas movies that are also bad.
I don't know. I think it's just interesting to analyze the various interpretations when it comes to, again, I'm just infinitely fascinated by legends and how people different interpret that, and will this become someone's definitive version of how Santa came to be? I think is the thing I'm most curious about, what the impact of this has, because I could definitely see it. Again, anything that has Santa wielding an axe at one point in time is going to immediately get some bonus points. But even despite that, I don't know. I feel like there might be more merit to getting to see him in such a mundane setting. There's a lot of fully colourful characters here, but it's still very. In the town itself, there is no magic or outside forces. It's very much just a miserable place. Getting to see this guy in there emerge makes everything feel much grander than if he was transported to a place with elves and reindeers that could fly and such like that. I think it makes the what little fantastical elements they are stand out more and have more weight.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. We need to go for another 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm kind of feeling a little tapped out. Did you have anything else you wanted to make sure we covered?
One thing, to kind of back to circle around to how I started this conversation. I'm curious because this was kind of an experiment when it was put together. Do you think this was effective in kind of pitching that 2D animation can still stand next to 3D animation? And would you like to see this usher in a renaissance, or do you think it's just too time-consuming and cost-effective to really make a big difference?
I think the two mediums are both fine to use. What I'd like to see more of is, instead of one becoming standard, I'd like to see whatever project is going to be made justifying which style it's going to use. I'd like 2D to not be forgotten as it feels it has become. So I'd certainly be happy if this can help reestablish it a bit. But what I would like for is for different animated films to justify, okay, why is this film 2D or why is this film 3D? As opposed to just one or the other becoming the default. Because one thing I'm always a fan of is when something justifies the medium it's using. We're making a film. Does it have to be a film, or could you have told this as a comic or a book or something else? I'm doing this as an audio drama. Well, why did it have to be an audio drama? Couldn't it have just been a movie? And so with 2D and 3D animation, we're doing this film in 2D. Okay, why? Is it just because that's the standard? Is it just a cost thing? Or is there something in the presentation that you can only capture with 2D animation? Or vice versa with 3D animation? That's kind of where I would like things to be. So if this film helps reestablish 2D animation as just as an effective medium as 3D, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go for it forward. I was just curious to see, because maybe this anyone's gone through this in the comments below. Do you have a preference, or do you think the more measured medium, art by art, kind of what looking at it as if you are a painter, right, and choosing which brush to use? What best is a tool to be used rather than what everyone else is using, so that's the most marketable and most profitable? I definitely think that's a strong way to go, because again, as much as I do think this is gorgeous, and I probably do lean more towards 2D animation being my preferred stance, there are definitely strengths and weaknesses to both, and 3D animation can be gorgeous and beautiful and do things 2D animation could never dream of, and vice versa. So I feel like them being able to find an almost equilibrium would be the best result to come out of this. But if we do end up getting like 50 new gorgeously animated films on anything, really, you won't me complaining. Give me my family-friendly Superman Christmas animated film like the Fleischer stories, please.
That's a cool idea.
Let's just do like a reverse Richard Donner now. You already did Father Christmas, now do Superman. Everyone's in a Christmas movie has to make a Superman movie at some point. Is the new rule I'm enforcing.
I'll get Billy Bob Thornton. I'll get Billy Bob Thornton, I guess. Well, it's going to be one hell of a Superman movie. Okay, here we go. Billy Bob Thornton. Fan cast him as any character in Superman's lore. It can be a villain. It can be a news reporter character. Who's Billy Bob Thornton going to play in a Superman movie?
Yeah, real quick.
Oh, you don't know who Billy Bob Thornton is? Oh.
Okay, I mean... Toyman.
Toyman? Okay. That'd be interesting. Alrighty. Well, Alfie, this is a good pick. Let's go ahead and go on to ratings. I'll go first since I'm pretty sure you're going to land above me. I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 schools of fishes, because I thought that was a clever joke.
Cool. I'm gonna give this, I was actually gonna give it the exact same rating, but because I do want to continue my stance that I am gonna put it higher than you, just to one up your bullshit, I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Words fail me. 4.5 birdhouses, maybe?
There you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say dead wives, but that kind of fell against the spirit of Christmas.
So inappropriate. Okay. Well, anyway, next week, this should be interesting. I hope I'll have some stories for you because I'm decorating tomorrow. We're going to talk about Christmas decorations.
Okay.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I don't know how we're going to get an hour out of that conversation, but we're going to try, damn it.
You will try. I'm just gonna immediately derail for fun.
Okay. All right. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the champion of the oppressed.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we'll be discussing things. I suddenly feel like so inconsequential in comparison to you.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!